Welcome to This Week in Metropolis. The transmission will begin shortly.
Yeah, King P here,
And Steelio7.
and welcome to another episode of This Week in Metropolis.
Yeah, we've got another special guest on the show today with us. Today we have got Robbie from Out of the Blank podcast, which me and Matt were lucky enough to be guests on, both separately and together, representing This Week in Metropolis. Robbie, welcome to the show.
My whole life, people have called me special, but you guys said it in a different way than I think when they meant it.
Especially in a good way.
In a very good way. And you're also the second person, I think, to say that. I think when we had Adam on, I think he also mentioned the fact that we refer to him as a special friend or something like that. So,
well, that makes it feel even less special than people that called me this growing up.
Yeah, you're the second special.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
But yeah, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. We'll start off, Rob, by if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, about your show as well. How did you get started?
My name is Robbie. I'm a Capricorn.
I'm a
I
Capricorn.
really I enjoy long walks on the beach. That's really about it about me. But I started this podcast, which is supposed to be conversations with people where you just kind of start up a meeting and just chat, no specific topics, and just having fun. I always hate plugging the show or something, but it led me to have both of you wonderful gentlemen on, which was an amazing experience to understand that you guys are pro technology, where I feel like I'm in the Amish stages. I mean, it took me 20 minutes when we joined this call for me to figure out how to see myself, and apparently I still haven't figured it out.
Well, I mean, your show is it was really fun to be on because the conversation did go all around into various different places. But you put a show out every day, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're up to, I think last count was 590 something.
Yeah, it's 596 today.
Yeah, and I mean, we managed to put out one a week, which seems like it takes
It
a
feels
whole
like a
lot.
burden sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Certainly for Matt, who does all the editing of the show. How do you? I tip my hat to you for managing to do so many.
Trust me, I wish I could stop doing it every day, but I feel like I've kind of isolated myself in there now, where it's like, all right, we've solidified this to be an everyday type show. I mean, you come across people every single day. It's not hard to have a conversation. I mean, like, you guys kind of were nervous coming on to my show, and I just told you, hey, it's just conversation. If you have a topic you want to bring up, if you have anything, throw it in there. Because, I mean, you look around the world today, not everybody's having conversations anymore. And if it is, it's over like a phone. So it's like, gets so miscommunicated. That's why I hate technology. Is like, can you go to the store and get me bread, turns into go to the store, and get me bread. And it's like, it comes off as aggressive, and you're like, whoa, I can smell the testosterone from here. So it's like, I really wanted a show where someone could come on. And it is, I mean, getting people to come on every single day. I do one day, it's like 12 recordings or something. So that's 12 hours. I mean, I don't edit. The only time I really ever edit is like a couple shows ago, I had a guest who, it was an hour and 45-minute recording. I put it down to 55 minutes because I took out all his pauses because he had a speech problem. And he was really nervous about me uploading it because he didn't want to look bad. And I said, I never started this thing for, most people, like, if you invite somebody on or something, they look at it like, oh, why are you picking me? Is it something I posted? It seems like an attack. And I'm like, I'm here for just literally to expand my own knowledge. I would say selfish intent on the fact of I could have a conversation with you, I can have a conversation with Matt, and next thing I know, I'm on this whole other plane where I'm like, wait a minute, there are people that are pro Neuralink right now. I want to understand that train of thought. And it's been fun. It's been a little fun journey.
I think what I've found since we started doing the podcast is it's been almost like there's such a community. I think of other podcasts that really echo what you said in terms of just putting their thoughts out there, getting to know whoever it is that they've got on the show, or getting to know a different perspective. And it seems to be, we've found, and I know sort of James runs the social side of things more and gets loads of messages of different podcasters reaching out and sort of, sharing their things or giving us feedback and something like that. It's been it's been really welcoming. It's amazing. It's nice having that. Like you said, it's nice having that platform where there is interaction on that sort of basic human level, which I think is fantastic.
Definitely.
It's a great way to reconnect. Like you guys doing a podcast once a week. Okay. That's perfect because that gives you the time like, hey, I haven't talked to you in a couple of days. Let's just shoot an episode. Let's talk about some things. It's a great way. That's why I'm pro people starting podcasts. I mean, everybody's doing it now. My UPS guy had a podcast. He was like, you should listen to my podcast. I'm like, dude, you don't even deliver my packages correctly. Why would I even tune into that? But it's an experience. I come across with a little bit of a different mindset when it comes to talking to people with podcasts as well. I found my niche group, which is like people I support, but everyone's always looking for the promotion. That's why I don't really like talking about the show when I'm like, if somebody asks me how I start or something, I'm like, yeah, I've said it before, but it's just so much like, it's so much better to be in the now and in the moment with things, especially like if I'm talking to you guys, we could talk about aliens, we could talk about whatever, instead of somebody coming on and just wanting an interview. And you get that all the time. I'm like, look, I'm not an interview guy because I can bring up poop at any moment. An interview, most of them can't do that. That's why I say it's conversation. And you find that with some people, they just have this natural way of talking where it's like you get this vibe, but like every episode, there's that first awkward 10 minutes where it's like, let's do this back and forth banter of getting to know each other real quick, and then let's dive into it.
Yeah.
But then it's like I guess a scavenger hunt. Once I find that little niche, the one that makes their eyes light up, I'm like, oh, here we go. And then I just start diving into it. Next thing you know, they're opening up about stuff, and you hear about, like, I heard a story about this guy who was with his kid, and they saw a person get hit by a car, but it was an Amish guy, so they hit the back of the buggy, and the dude just went face first into, and that would have never came out. He's like, I've never even told that story before.
No.
I was like, that's what I'm saying, is you start talking. I mean, it's a conversation with me, so that can legit go anywhere.
Definitely. I mean, when I came on your show, Robbie, I was really nervous about it because it's the first time I've ever done anything like that. Even though me and Matt do a podcast every week, I've been involved in a good friend of mine's, Steve's on SCW, the wrestling podcast. I've been involved in it in that respect. But when it's someone you don't know and you've literally spoken a few messages over, and there was a few, and we kind of chatted a little bit on there, but it was kind of a little bit daunting not knowing what was going to happen and what questions might be asked. And it certainly, like you said, the first 5-10 minutes you're kind of feeling each other out a little bit. Where's this going to go? And then all of a sudden it can. What I was going to say to you is, what's been kind of, is there any that's been, let's flip it on its head a bit, any people that you've had that have been really weird guests, like that you've just been a bit kind of, whoa?
I've had guests that have been a little bit weird, and I've had probably out of, let's round it to 600, and it's only a couple episodes away, and I got like 30 saved on my computer. So when I tell people, it's all pre-recorded, so it's not live. It's not like you have to think of an answer right on the spot. If you need a minute to think, I'll be more than happy to go back and edit it out if it's like an extremely long pause. But I've had guests that get weird, like, I'm going to do my own separate recording as well. And I'm like, why do you need it? And it's like this whole mentality of, and I understand it too, because from talking to so many people, the best thing I like is that I try and understand everyone's perspective on things. So you hear someone say, I'm going to do my own recording as well. You're thinking, okay, are you going to use a soundbite to it? That might make sense. More times than not, it's the fact of they've done a guest appearance, and then someone has been like, how you doing, Steely? You doing good today, man? Well, let me, then you get into this deep conversation for 5 minutes, and the next thing you know, they go, so are you against Trump? Are you against? And then it goes into this whole thing where the person's like, hold on, I want to make sure I get the actual recording so you can't edit out anything and make it seem like something I'm not. And I try and tell people, like, I'm almost on 600 episodes. There's probably about 80 episodes I haven't released because someone last minute's like, I don't feel comfortable you releasing that. And then I'm like, all right, well, that was an hour scrapped, but thanks anyway. And when you come across like the episodes I've done, not to keep referencing it, but you come across so many perspectives of things. And I tell people, like, I couldn't be anybody else. I couldn't keep up an act for this long of a time. Like, this is genuinely me. You see my reaction when someone tells me something that just blows my mind. Like, oh yeah, I used to own a brothel. I'm like, oh, what? Like, it's those moments where it catches me off guard, but like I'm genuinely interested in how you're doing, how your day's going, and what conversation can we get into? Because sometimes you find out some stuff that you never knew. Sometimes you're letting people in on stuff they never knew.
Well, you'll be pleased here that we have some topics that we can throw your way and get your opinion on during this episode. Which, James, you've got the starting point for us.
First one that I got to bring up this week is off the back of watching a show in the UK. I'm guessing you can catch it in the States, but Top Gear, which has been going for years in the UK, predominantly used to be mainly about reviewing cars, but it then became more of an entertainment show when Clarkson and the other gang were on there. Nowadays, I mean, I haven't watched the show. My dad's really into it because he's a big car enthusiast, and they do a lot of these kind of big stunt kind of things on there. They do review quite interesting, as I'm a car owner, and something that I have been looking into a lot more recently is looking at electric cars or hybrids and things like that. So certainly for the future, isn't there a stat that they reckon that by 2025
they're supposed to phase out all gas cars?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so
like I told you, it leads into the thing I was telling you about. I don't want to reference Joe Rogan, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but honestly, with all this crap that's come out with our politics, and I called the I Am Legend thing. I told you guys this. I said, wait 6 months for that vaccine, just in case, let me work out all the kinks. I don't want to be the first guy. But then I was like listening to this Alex Jones go off about some stuff. So what I do with him is I pause it every 2 minutes because he's a lot like me when it comes to just having ADHD and going all over the place where your listeners like, what is going on right now? Like he just went from Bigfoot to ripsticks to crime to the judicial system to all these things. It's like, this isn't making sense. So you got to pause it. So when I was pausing it, they start talking about the carbon emissions and how it's like this, like, media blows it way out of proportion to where it actually is at. And I'm like, all right, hold on. Let's take a break here because I am I've camped all my life. I'm pro environment. I'm not an environmentalist. Like I don't go and preach out with signs and do all that stuff, but I do support like recycling, all these other types of things because I care about the world we live in. But then he started mentioning a bunch of stuff about how even electric cars are giving off as much or even more emissions than gas-powered cars. And I'm like, well, then what's the point? And he talks about how the number or levels of carbon dioxide that's increasing right now, that's affecting our ozone layer, is raising temperatures. That's for sure. But what it is, it's also terraforming our planet. The whole factor is plants thrive off carbon dioxide and they give off oxygen. When we start having these high levels of oxygen, plant levels start to die. But since we're exposing so much carbon dioxide, next thing you know, plants are going to start growing bigger. I mean, I've been podcasting with people that do their own botanical gardens and stuff. And next thing you know, they're talking about like, every year my peppers just keep getting bigger and I'm doing the same thing and I'm not adding extra fertilizer or anything. I'm like, carbon dioxide levels are increasing. So things are going to get bigger. Produce is going to get bigger. It's not saying it's a good thing that we're emitting all this stuff out there, but it's not good for humans. That's the higher carbon dioxide levels and lower oxygen levels. That's bad for us for survival, but it's good for plants. It's going to be a whole nother ice age again, not where it's going to be nothing but ice, but an overgrowth of how long human species has. I mean, I'm already afraid about the debates and stuff, but the factor of like, I would like to know that one day I'd have a pepper plant the size of my house. That sounds amazing.
You'll be able to live in the pepper.
In the pepper,
I think
yeah,
is
yeah.
The
Like
thing.
James and the Giant Peach.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, they didn't actually go into the detail of what emissions are coming out of these electric cars, but the one that they kind of focused on was this Honda E, which Matt, I know you've seen bits and pieces about it, but my mind was just blown with some of the stuff. I mean, it looked you could tell that it was an electric car. There's certain manufacturers, car manufacturers, who design their e-cars so that they're clearly an electric car. And the way I can describe it is like Mini, for example. They've got their own electric car. It looks like a Mini Cooper. It looks, like a bog standard. But the wheels have got like some
They
weird
put weird
alloy.
wheels.
Yeah,
I don't
just
know if
strange.
that's for aerodynamics or something like that,
Who
Just
knows?
to look cool. They always
Yeah,
say
yeah.
or just to look
aerodynamics.
futuristic.
But the thing is, the wheels actually, and the hosts on the show actually said like the car looks, except for the wheels, kind of stood
Yeah.
out like a sore thumb. With this Honda E, it did look, there was a classic element to it, but then at the same time you could still tell it was like a new modern electric version. But some of the information like that they showed you about the car, it wasn't that it was necessarily fast or anything like that. I think it was 0 to 60 in about 8 seconds. The top speed was 100 miles an hour. But things that kind of stood out for me, inside the car, you had like the full dashboard, which was all like touch screens. And they said there's more screens in this car than there is at your local Dixons or stores alike. But
I don't think Robbie would get that reference.
well, exactly in America.
Dixon's was a high street, like imagine Walmart, but like
All electric,
selling TVs,
Yeah.
and stuff.
Oh,
More
kind of like a Best Buy or whatever. where you
Yeah,
walk in
Best
with
Buy,
the
yeah,
wall
yeah,
of
exactly.
TVs.
It's a good
Best
example.
comparison, yeah.
But he said like the features on these screens, other than the obvious kind of your sat navs and things like that, there was a feature on there that you can have like almost like a desktop wallpaper that you have on your computer of
No.
Japan.
No.
And then a second feature, and the funny thing is, the host of the show, I forget his name, but he said, not sure what the relevance of that is, but it looks cool. And then he said, and if you don't like that one, there's an aquarium you can make it. So that you literally see these fish. So it's like while you're driving, you can observe some,
It
graphic.
reminds me of the old commercials where like I'm a PC and I'm a Mac. It's like,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
But the other thing, there was an actual PowerPoint in the car, I guess, like you would in a modern day now, where you can add where your lighters used to be, where you can put in a charging point or whatever. But there was an actual UK 3-prong PowerPoint, and the guy said if you wanted to plug your PlayStation into this, you could. And I just thought, at what point are you going to be bringing a PlayStation? I mean, as well, the screen ratio was a bit weird anyway, like how you play a game on there. But it's just mad to think what's going on with these cars at the moment. But the best thing about this episode for me, the point of it was they were racing 3 different E-type cars around a theme park, which I thought was that they were Thorpe Park, Alton Towers, sorry, in the UK, and they were literally driving these around. They had to get from one side to the other, and it was just showing you the kind of how good they were with manoeuvring
Handling and stuff,
handling and things like that. It was an awesome episode, but crazy to think what technology they're putting into cars now.
Well, the interesting thing I find that for an American, like the Hummer is such a iconic car that was, the example of, I think Hummers did 8 miles to the gallon or something ridiculous like that. The General Motors is now releasing an electric one. And that has Unreal Engine is the entertainment system in it. So Epic Games, who make Fortnite and other games, have a game engine called Unreal. Hummer General Motors have used their game engine for the for the entertainment system within, like the whole dashboard and everything like that runs on that. So.
I wonder how much one of them's going to set you back, because even
I think they're about $90,000 or something. They're the premium prices.
We're going to call this Robbie's issues, okay? One, I want to come off as saying I'm not saying climate change isn't real. It's definitely real. 2, the Hummer thing. It took me, I remember I had an electric go-kart as a kid. You could charge that thing for 3 days. Next thing you know, you had maybe, an hour at the best of it? How long is it going to take to charge a Hummer? Yeah. Like you're charging your car. Well, I work on Monday and it's Tuesday now, so maybe by the time I'll be able to drive 10 minutes down the road. that's what gets me is when you start like the display thing you're talking about. I saw a video on Facebook of, I think it was Lamborghini or whoever, one of the giant, like, the cars where it's like you got to have a lot of money to buy something like that. You didn't have the key, like we talked about. You don't have the key to open up your car anymore. You don't have, it's a button, it's a thing, it's a thumbprint scanner. I guess I'm a classics man. I love the old school muscle cars. I love the old body styles of them. I wish we could go back to something like that. But all this technology and stuff that's coming out, cars that drive for themselves and everything like this, it's going to end up separating people. I mean, people aren't going to want to go into that type of thing. Like, I'll give you an example. My gas station used to just have regular gas and diesel. And then we started getting a couple of electric car users, the Tesla people. And the next thing you know, eventually they have more electric car pumps than they do for gas pumps. And then it's like, how long until I'm driving? It's like, oh, we don't do gas anymore. You're going to have to go down the street. Like, it's this whole phase out thing where if it starts being like, you see a couple dwindle in like rare little unicorns, and next thing you know, everybody's jumping on the band. Eventually, take out the other. So you're feeling like you're forced into getting this type of car. I don't mind, having all that technology around, but it is so confusing, and I think it's a lot for people. I mean, I have still today not come across a person that can walk and text properly. Like, I don't trust you driving a Tesla and playing PlayStation. Like, it doesn't make sense. That doesn't compatible with my brain.
I'll tell you what I think will happen though. Talking to a friend about this recently, that I see where definitely electric cars going to come in and be the norm, but where I see it, and I guess sort of part of me where I would like to see it go is being someone who likes sort of computers and builds their own computers and that sort of thing, and has control over what I put in it, how much memory, how fast, whatever it is. I think in the future, electric cars will be very accessible in that sense, that you'll have someone who has that level of knowledge that can swap out the batteries or can, add new software to it, or can, change the lights to do whatever colors they want. Like those sort of modifications in that sense, I think it'll be a lot more accessible for people to do.
You shouldn't be getting a Tesla if the only reason you're getting a Tesla is because it can dance.
No, exactly.
I heard so many people talking about, I want to get it because it can dance. I'm like, oh. Where does your mind go? It's like, it doesn't make sense. It's like getting actually, I just kind of destroyed my own point there, because I've bought video games where I just like, one thing about the video game is Viva Pinata. I just like to hit the pinatas with the shovel. That's all.
But that's the thing. I think people look at, because I agree. I love driving, and I love the sort of experience of going fast and like the feel of my car, which is it, right? This is the absolute opposite from a muscle car. You mentioned muscle cars. My regular driver, especially when I'm like commuting to work, is a Fiat 500. But what I love about it, it's like a go-kart, and James can testify it's like a go-kart because I nearly killed him one day in it. And it's just that it's quite low to the ground. It's a very small chassis. It's light. It's got a lot of torque. You can feel you're driving the car. You've got that connection to the engine, and I absolutely love that. But for me, the electric cars, like the performance and things like that is far different from a normal petrol engine car in terms of the power delivery and that. It's very different. But I don't know.
It's like the BMW, their company, what they do is they put an artificial sound in like your radio. It's like a low hum thing. Yeah. So next thing you know, you think it's your car engine starting when it's a false sound. It's not even really, that's not your actual engine purr. Yeah. So it's like they do that with gas cars. It's like that's gonna be like that with electric cars, where some dude's like, I'm just gonna input like the new Mustang, you can do silent mode, and next thing you know, it turns like a low rum. I'm like, then get a car that doesn't make a sound. Like, I get it, but like, what? I'm going to be quiet in my neighborhood. Nobody's thinking that. If you're buying like a $50,000 Mustang that has all these, like, it's whatever,
Yeah.
souped up to the gills, you're going to let your whole neighborhood know. You're going to start it at 3 o'clock in the morning and just sit there. There was a person that lived in my neighborhood that had a brand new Corvette, a 2020 Corvette, and this old man just goes out into his car at 1 o'clock in the morning, just starts it up, and all he hears, and it just so loud where you wake up like,
Yeah.
bro. And then he starts mowing his lawn at 1 o'clock in the morning. You're like, it's dark out. How are you? You even see where you're going?
He loves the sound of that mower.
Oh gosh.
No, that's one of the things I remember. Look, as I say, my dad's a huge car enthusiast, but and he would spend hours kind of kitting out his cars because he done a bit kind of mechanic work when I was certainly younger, and it was all about kind of that sound that the car made as well. So these electric ones, like you said, I mean, we've worked with someone who's got or had an electric car. I don't know if she's still got it, but the thing is silent. Like it sounds almost like a spaceship going past you when it does. And the fear that I always have with it is it's so quiet, and you know, people do walk around with headphones in while they're walking around the street, and 9 times out of 10 you can still hear a car. If you can't hear it and you're not paying attention, surely you're more liable. I'm not saying it's the driver's fault.
But that's the question, is it? Is that the car's fault or their fault? You know, you've got to pay more attention, haven't you?
Well, yeah. This isn't me, by the way. But anyway.
Well, I'll give you an example. Like right now, I have my car is about a 2015, I think it is. It's pretty new comparison to a lot of cars that are out there on the roads. Yeah. It's nice. Bluetooth, you know, I hop in, I don't have to plug in my phone to anything. You know, I can charge my phone and drive. It'll charge probably in a matter of a couple of minutes. But for the past 2 months, I've been using an old school 2000, and it's a Toyota. Yeah. So when you're driving with the headlights on at night, which I go to work at like 2 in the morning, so everything's pitch black. So I got like my lights on. I go to roll the window down and the lights dim because you realize the battery's it's not strong enough to have everything going at once. Yeah. It was a more simple age where when you were driving, you weren't having everything plugged in. So it was only focusing on what it needed to do, that one thing. It shows how we've grown as people. But then, like, I was charging my phone, and I'm like, all right, it's at 30%. I'm about to do like maybe a 35-minute drive. I'm driving. I was rolling the window down. I was playing music on the radio. My phone did not go up 1%. It went down. I said, but it says it's charging. And it was like it wasn't focusing on the phone anymore. It was focusing on everything else that was trying to keep the car going. But that new car didn't start this morning. It's somehow, you know, it got like dropped like 30 degrees. It's why I'm wearing a hoodie right now, is because I'm too cheap to turn on the heat. But it was cold, and I was like, okay, let me get in my car. And I went to hit the unlock button, and it didn't make a noise. And I was like, is my battery dead? And it was just it couldn't handle the cold. Next thing you know, I hop in this old Toyota, and I'm like, turn it on, turns right on, and the heat always works.
Yeah, the simplicity sometimes.
Well, and that's the thing. I think cars these days, I mean, with so many things on there are kind of auto now. I can't remember the last time I had to play about with lights or anything like that, because it automatically, you know, the window wipers come on if rain touches the glass. You know, there's so many things that probably we take for granted in a respect of how we used to operate older cars. I mean, I'm quite fortunate in the sense I've only driven for 4 years now, and my cars have always had that autonomous kind of functions to it. Whereas older cars, you have to remember to change this, that, and the other. But
it's like the same thing with censorship, for instance. If you want to kind of like you gotta stay with me. This is a long walk for a short drink of water. But like censorship, H.G. Wells, he talked about that you shouldn't. There are times you should censor things, but once you start censoring things and you start breeding this thing of you can never say this, you can never say that, it leads to low intellective people. It's the same thing with like, you're not going to know a lot of words. You're going to be afraid to use them. You're never going to learn them. You should always know, like, you know, reading, all these types of things started getting phased out when electronics started coming out. More people are on devices. It has been shown that technology has made people a little bit dumb when it comes to some things. So I look at like my buddy's house, for instance. I go up there, he's all Amazon Alexa'd up. You go to the doorbell, and before you even grab the door handle, it goes, welcome. And then it's just like, please insert passcode. And I'm like, oh, what's this passcode?
I shouldn't need to know his passcode.
I was like, I don't even know my password into like my Xbox account. So I'm like kind of nervous a little bit about it. So, I end up typing in this code that he gives me. I walk into his house and he's got a brand new refrigerator that's an LG. So I'm hitting on this LG fridge and I go to pull open the door. The thing is see-through. So it can shut down so you can see inside of the refrigerator before you know what you're going to grab. And I'm like,
We
wait a
was
minute,
talking about this the other day, wasn't we?
Yeah, we
I
was.
was like, you're supposed to grab it and open up the door to be able to, see, oh, there's nothing in here I want, and then shut it. Now it's like you just tap the screen and it shows you right into it. I'm like, okay, this is just breeding laziness. I get the factor of why you have it, but this isn't fun for anybody. I think like to the point where he's sitting down and I'm like, oh, I forgot to turn off the bathroom light. He's like, I got it. Alexa, lights off in bathroom, and the lights turn off. I'm like, that's awesome, but that's so lazy. Like you're supposed to have that dreaded 1 minute walk back up to the, oh, I gotta get up. Are you kidding me? Like you need that because then once you start letting all that stuff in, everything in your life starts to become lazy. You rather watch Netflix.
You don't
What you
realise you're
don't
doing
realise,
something.
Robbie, is James is currently on that path to laziness. Tell him what you bought in the last week.
Last week, Robbie, I have bought bulbs for light bulbs, which have got kind of Wi-Fi built into them, so I don't need a hub or anything like that. Purely they're RGB bulbs, so that I can change them all different colours. But they also link up to my Alexa, which is next to me right now.
This is what scares me is the fact of, you remember that joke, how many people does it take to screw in a light bulb? You're not going to know how to screw in your light bulb at one point because it's going to be so advanced. You're like, I don't know what, this thing doesn't even have a bulb to it. What do I do? You just throw it in the air and it'll suck into the thing.
I mean, you're right. There's certain levels. I mean, I've seen them doorbells and things like that. They're advertised all the time at the moment and there's benefits with security and things like that. But again, I kind of feel like there is an element of laziness. And what I will say is I've hardly used Alexa when it comes to playing about with these. It's all through an app on my phone to change the colour of them. It's essentially having a dimmer switch and things like that, which I find quite useful with a night and things like that. But you're right, it is crazy. But speaking of crazy, Matt, you've got a food story that you've seen, which is linked to crazy things like this.
Changing the subject very slightly. So, in terms of, I think this ties in very well to what we were saying about changing stuff that doesn't need changing necessarily. There's a company that you may be familiar with, Robbie, called Impossible Foods, and they're one of the companies that develops or sells, I think, in a lot of places now. I'm sure Burger King even sold some of their burgers, which aren't meat but look and taste like meat. That's
so they're being honest about the actual product. You think you're going to McDonald's and getting actual beef? Ha!
Whereas this is like soya and whatever it is. But anyway, what they're doing now, they're not content with the meat market. They're sort of branching out into other areas. A lot of people use plant-based milks. I know I do, certainly. But this is they want milk that looks like milk, tastes like milk, acts like milk, but isn't actually milk. Is their next product.
Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. The weird thing though, like that's fine. I think, that's something that you can reason with and think, there are lots of people that are lactose intolerant. There are lots of people that can't have milk for whatever reason. Great. Oh, there we go. So
lactose sensitive, my boy. If you're in a room with me and I have eggs, I'm sorry. You're
So you'd be the same with Matt.
Let me come on to the next thing then. What they're trying to do, their thing that they're researching or doing in the background is a fake egg. So, but it's actually crackable. So it will look like an egg and you'll crack it and it acts like an egg, but it's not an egg. I don't know what it is, but yeah.
Wasn't that like a thing when we were kids? Was when they would say something like, if it looks like this and it acts like this, it's probably not this or something like that. That was a warning. Are we not taking that into account now? I mean, I'm fine. Like, look, I studied a lot about GMOs in school and stuff, a lot about nutrition for like my fitness thing I love doing. And studying about GMOs, it's definitely like bad your food. But being able to change I would say the leaves of a plant so insects won't attack it and destroy a whole crop field and waste a whole entire crop thing, it's definitely needed to be able to grow food in areas where you can't grow food.
Yeah.
I like the honesty factor of like, hey, we're letting you guys know this isn't meat, it's processed stuff. Because I mean, my buddy, he gets McDonald's like every morning since he does HVAC, so that's like his breakfast thing. Well, instead of getting the amazing egg McMuffin, which is the only thing I would get at McDonald's, because the smell of those things, I don't know if I'm having a stroke or if I'm just in heaven. But he was getting a burger and he bit into it. And he was like, what is this? And he looks, and on the back of his bread, there was mold.
Oh.
And then the next day, he was eating another cheeseburger. And I'm like,
I can't
dude,
believe he went back.
that's what I'm saying. I would never go and eat back at that place. I would never eat fast food again if that happened to me. I haven't had fast food in 7 years, only because I got massively sick. And it might have been what I was on at the time. I was a little bit, it was back in high school. I was a bit of a 420 guy. But not like wearing a tie-dye shirt. I never went that far. But I had 3 McChickens, and I got massively sick, like to the point where I thought I was going to have to go to the emergency room and get my stomach pumped. And as it came back up, it was blue.
Oh,
Nothing I
God.
consumed on that thing was blue. So it made me question, what type of meat is this, and what are they using? I'm fine if a company says, this is what this is. This isn't meat. This isn't beef. This isn't a cow. This is processed food.
Yeah.
We molded it and painted it using Leonardo da Vinci's skills to be able to make it look like an actual edible thing. I'm fine if you go and say that. That makes, in my eyes, you're doing the right thing.
It's
because you're
your
letting
choice
people
then
know.
to have it or not, isn't it?
But it's like, if you're eating a pasta dinner, you're going to be in pain afterwards. You're going to be in a carb load because it's blank calories. So what you're saying about it's milk, but it isn't milk. It was for the people that didn't want dairy, didn't want this. For someone that doesn't eat dairy, okay. But if you really want milk that bad, and you just want something, but it isn't milk, I just don't want the milk. That's like having a pasta dinner saying, I don't want the after effect. No, you need the after effect. When I drink a glass of milk because I'm craving it or something, I know everyone in the room is going to be suffering, and then I'm probably going to be in some pain. So that's the thing. It takes out that factor. Once you start doing that, you're trying to breed like this perfect world where there's no issues for anybody to come across. Sometimes you're supposed to walk out and your car won't start. Sometimes you're supposed to be like, crap, I have an allergic reaction to peanut butter. Okay, then don't have peanut butter, because eventually somebody's going to try a process that's going to fine tune it. Almond butter, okay, then they're going to experience a severe allergic reaction because everyone is so uniquely different. They just find a template that works. So with all these processing of foods, it's like, do you really want milk that bad to where you want someone to spend billions of dollars trying to figure out a milk that's not milk? Or can we use that money for something else?
But the thing is, there are so many, like you mentioned, Matt, like plant-based, or like you have almond milk, don't you?
Rice is
Rice
milk.
milk.
What I like particularly.
So my wife, my son, when he was born, was allergic to dairy. So we had to go through the whole having oat milk, which again, for me, there was certainly a difference because we all went on board with it. And for me, I still prefer cow's milk, but at the same time, it's not that much different. There's a slight.
You get used to it.
Exactly, you adapt to it. Exactly, and to have something which is kind of manufactured in a way where, it's fake, but what is it? Kind of.
I don't trust it. Like,
No,
I'm a big fan of sort of eating food that is food. That's the simpler ways I can describe it. If you're having a meal and it's you've got meat or you've got vegetables and they are just food or oats or whatever it is. To go, as you said, Robbie, to go through this like crazy process of engineering, I think is the best word, engineering a food to be something that it wasn't. I don't know. Well, it was.
I'm okay with that when it comes to maybe the factor of if you're going to modify it when it's in the processing part, but modifying an animal,
Yeah.
I'm not on that mindset of things. I think that's a little bit too far. Like, oh, if we inject it into the cow's udder, it won't come out as dairy. It'll take the dairy out of it. I'm like, well, hang on a second. Then
Yeah.
that's fertilization of an animal, and that seems like that's inhumane if we even thought about doing that to humans. So think in the mindset of a creature or a human being. But like, for instance, we adapt. James, you said it. We adapt. I haven't had red meat in a very, very long time. Do I get cravings for it? Yes. But if I even have like a tiny, like penny-sized piece of a burger, or what is it, pounds in your guys' thing? You guys know what I'm talking about? The size of a coin.
Oh
Yeah.
Yeah. Pounds as in currency, not weight.
Yeah.
But a little tiny bit of like a cap or something of red meat, my stomach goes into this panic mode where it doesn't know what it is. It's like I haven't had this in years. Anything bacon of that sort. I'm not vegan. I eat fish 24/7. Actually, I eat so much cans of tuna that my doctor was like, "You have mercury poisoning." I was like, "What does that mean?" He goes, well,
Stop
mercury
eating fish.
poisoning.
That's not a good thing to
Yeah.
laugh. Apologies,
He was
laughing
like-
at the fact you got mercury poisoning.
I'm like, well, what's the downsides of having mercury poisoning? He goes, depression. I was like, I already got that. I'm not worried about
Doesn't
that.
your hair fall out?
He goes, yep, your hair falls out. I was like,
Yeah.
that explains. I actually got a haircut because someone at my work was like, is your hair, like, are you missing spots? I was like, what? So I was freaking out. Like, I built it up in my mind. And the hair lady's like, no, you're fine. I was like, all right, cool. It's just the way I combed it, I guess. But that tells you how bad I can easily get freaked out when it comes to small stuff. Big stuff I don't care about, except maybe robots taking over. But when it comes to like you was talking about hair falling out, and he was like, you get fatigue. I'm like, dude, I'm always tired. I don't sleep. And he goes, okay. And he goes, well, all the side effects seems like you're probably just suffering from that. It might not even be that you have insomnia. I'm like, so what's the fix? And he goes, stop eating a can of tuna. Try something else. I was like, but it's so cheap. He goes, what? Your health is more important. I was like, bro, $1 for a can of tuna. I don't want to hear anybody complain about food. Eating healthy is too high price. Can of tuna is $1. A thing of Honey Smacks, which is my all-time favorite cereal I got salmonella poisoning from, is $5. Okay, so don't contest me with the processed sugar stuff. Like, it just goes through it goes one in one ear, not the other. But we adapt to things, such as like if you don't have something for so long, your body will adapt to live without it. If you slowly start introducing something back into your body, just like in the hunter and gatherer days, I don't think anybody back then was like, I get the tummy rumbles when I have the seeds of an apple. I get the tummy rumble. Is that mammoth? I can't eat mammoth. It's like, well, hang on a second. This is what we're eating. You ate a little bit, and eventually your body adapted to be able to handle this, such as like my little nephew, he was born with a lactose thing, but they slowly were giving him like milks, lower like varieties of milks, and he ended up overcoming it. So now where he can eat cereal, drink milk right out of the gallon, whatever he wants to do, to be able to handle that. But it's that process of adapting and evolving into it. But once you start making things artificial, you start doing this, your biggest fear isn't that you might get the tummy rumblings if you got the, dairy lactose, but it should be more on the fact of what are you putting in your body that's artificial. And this is where I get nervous, is because I had bought Arnold Palmer tea with the guy swinging the golf club and everything, and I was like, oh well, I'll get to this. I had a sip of it, and then I never touched it for like 5 months, and eventually it's just sitting there, and I'm like, all right, what? Like I don't use it. I can't, like, I might as well dump it out. So then I was thinking, like, oh my god, this is money going down the drain, literally. I dump it out into my drain, and there's a thick syrup that just came out and landed right over the drain filter. And I was like, that would have been inside of me, or my body would have broken that down. And when I started suffering from a gastrointestinal issue, I started realizing, like, I thought that was a rare thing. I thought people were going to be like, oh, that's crazy. Are you dying? How long do you have left to live? And I'm like, no, it's just like my stomach doesn't digest things. It doesn't handle things properly. But everyone was like, my colon taken out. Oh, I got this, I got that. Oh, I got this. All in their 20s and 30s. I'm like, wait a minute, is that the way we're eating as people? Is that the processing is now overloading our bodies even faster now? Back in the day, you would have you wouldn't experience something until like you're in your 60s, where then it starts to become an issue. Now kids are experiencing at the age of 20. Kids are experiencing like, severe infections and severe diseases. That's where I'm like, all right, we need to look at this, not the next Tesla going into outer space. We need to focus on our own nutrition right now.
Definitely.
And that's just the education of it, I think, more than anything, isn't it? Having that realization of food. Yeah, in a way, it's the way I look at it, it's that basics of food is a fuel for your body, and you need to think about the things that your body needs from it. If you're drinking 2 liters of Coke and whatever every single day, what's that giving your body? It's that trade-off, isn't it? If you're
Well, I've been doing
giving,
an experiment. Can I let you know my little experiment I'm doing?
please don't.
400 calories a day. Yeah.
That's an extreme experiment.
So through high school, where my fitness journey kind of started, I was only eating an apple a day. I had been bullied really bad to the point where it was like I just stopped eating in general. Like I was eating a bag of Doritos and a thing of Mountain Dew. Wouldn't gain a pound, but that was like the only thing I was eating all day.
Mm.
Then I started weightlifting, and I was like, all right, I heard that you have to meal plan and bulk up to like 3 meals. So it took a while to bulk up to eating chicken breast and literally feeding just to feed because you have to. And then now my body's so keen on certain times, like my breakfast is usually at like 4 a.m. and the next meal time's at 11, and the next meal time's 5 o'clock for dinner. I was wondering, like, because I eat my weight in protein, but I was like, is that because, like, am I hungry and I need something to fill that, or can I do a little experiment and see how much food I actually need? So I took 1 can of tuna, and I'll take a little bit of kale and I'll put it in a bowl. So whenever my mealtime comes, I'll take a quarter scoop, one little spoonful out of that can of tuna. So there's still like 1/3 of it or 2/3 of it left. And I'll put that on my salad. And then obviously I need to get a handful of cereal and crunch it up on top of my salad. It's croutons. Don't knock it till you try it. And then I would eat that. So that was my breakfast this morning. I won't get hungry until later. So I'm only consuming under 400 calories basically. So it was an experiment to see how much does our body actually need, and how much are we just feeding it because we've been brainwashed that we need this much, or is it another way? I mean, yeah, the rain hurts when it hits my skin, but I'm okay. Like,
But what is the end goal?
Yeah,
How long
that's what I
are
was
you
gonna
carrying
say.
on this? That's the key part, isn't it?
I think it was a main thing because, like, I've been much like most people, like in their 20s or something, you're living by yourself. So it's a funding thing. I'm trying to figure out how much money am I wasting on groceries that I don't ever really get to? How much money am I wasting on things where I can actually consume less and spend less? So I started doing that. Like I can cook a chicken breast and I'll just tear off bits and pieces of that chicken breast and then put it on top of my salad. So where one can last me 1 day instead of eating one for every single meal. So you're going through 3 a day. It's a whole money factor. How much do you honestly really need? And then
Yeah.
there's some psychopaths who are like, I fasted 18 hours. I'm like, I can't do that. I need to eat, every couple of hours. But you actually need a little bit less. But the thing is, that feeling of hunger, you start being like, oh, dude, I'm starving right now. It's like, yeah, how much till that fills that void? You know what I mean? A lot of it comes out of boredom. I think that's going to keep increasing. You're going to see, the market, processed foods, all these things. People are going to be spending more and more on money as the years progress, only because our attention spans are getting so freaking just low. Like you just you immediately want to be on Twitter, Facebook, doing another thing while you're doing something. It's like, this is an issue I come across in the podcast. A dude pulls out his phone or something. I'm like, it's an hour. Like you don't need to be on it. He's like, but my Clash of Clans. It's like, oh, I get it. I'm thinking about Dragon City as I'm talking to you gentlemen right now, but I'm in here and I'm in this conversation, and that's the point. Like, you just got to show up to the game. Whenever I went out with a lady or something, I'd be like, I'm just happy you showed up. Like, it's team effort here. Like, you know what I mean? It's that whole concept of, I think we need to slow down as people a little bit, and that correlates with our food too. You just maybe, like, I never even understood it until my grandma got really sick. I was kind of listening to a lot of her life lessons it kind of gave to me. And she was like, just put one chip in your mouth. Like when I was a kid, just one little salt and vinegar chip, and just suck on it and eat it. And I used to look at her like, you're a psychopath. Like, no freaking way I'm doing that. It's a
I'm going to
handful.
get a whole handful.
Yes. And literally, you can do that with McDonald's fries, where the fries are literally like they're coming out of your mouth off the sides, and they're literally trying to stop themselves from all getting shoved in there. And then I started doing that recently, though. I started taking a potato chip and just putting it in my mouth and kind of enjoying the flavor of it. And I would
Yeah.
go through like 5 of them and be like, I'm good. Like, I don't really need a whole lot of it. And I think that correlates with people. I mean, you get to see it all the time. Somebody suffers from, oh, I can't have this, I can't have that. I had a woman, she came in and she was like looking at all the back of the ingredients. I was like, there's no peanut butter in that if you're allergic to peanut butter. She goes, no, I'm allergic to anything fish. I'm like, we're in a beach town. Like, our main source is fish. Like, our rareness is a burger. And she's like, my kids wanted to live here. I was like, well, you're a good mom. And she was reading on the back of the supplements, like whey protein and stuff. And she was like, it couldn't be made in a factory that's next to a fish plant or anywhere near a fish thing. And I was like, I looked at her boyfriend. I was like, yo, she must be the hardest to shop for. Like, you ever go out to eat? Do you guys ever like enjoy anything? He goes, dude, it's a pain, but we do it. And I was like, all right, well, good on you. But like, that's a thing, is like, pay attention to what you're consuming, not just the calorie numbers. Pay attention to what's in it. Is it, how many artificial flavors can you name? I mean, this thing I'm drinking right here is a diet cream soda I get from Walmart. I didn't know until like last year it's free. And it's got 100 micrograms of potassium in it. Like, that's a banana. Like, and it's 0 calories. I'm like, hang on a second, what is in here? And it's got like potassium, and then it says malthic acid. Like, I don't know how to say malthic acid, so I probably shouldn't be drinking it, but it's good. So that's the mindset of people, is it's good and I don't need to pronounce it.
Well, I think we're coming to the end of the show, but I've got a question for you, Robbie. Just coming back full circle on your show, who would be, if you could have any sort of guest, is there anyone? I mean, the obvious one for viewers on YouTube would be your identical twin, Tom Holland would be your ideal guest.
I was called the working man's Tom Holland.
Well, you know from previous conversations we've had, my nephew, who does listen to my show, loves the fact that you're a Tom Holland. He thinks I'm talking to Spider-Man right now. So
I'll call him on
the dream.
Don't spoil it. But who, if you could have someone from, even if it was celebrity, if it was someone from a particular line of work, who would be your dream guest to have on your show?
I really thought about this because I stopped having famous people on because it felt like a way worse of a conversation. I feel like when people are giving you this amount of time and they want scripted questions, like always, I'm like, I don't know where my mind's going to go. But the best conversations I've ever had have been with people that don't care about the fame aspect of things. They just want to talk and they're really into it. Like, they're here to, like, I had a guy on and where I'm trying to talk about like him getting into blacksmithing and stuff, and he's like, I don't want to talk about that, I just want to talk, man. And I'm like, all right, dude, let's I'm down, let's do it. But a famous guest, or even a guest I really want.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be famous. It's just that sort of who's the unicorn that you've not found yet for your show?
I've talked to basically everybody, like even a Power Ranger, which I was pretty happy about. Really? But
what a real, like, on TV Power Ranger.
Yeah, like he did he was the stunt man for all of them from 1997 to 2002. And I was like, no way.
Golden era, isn't it?
Yeah, that's my childhood.
That was my era. That was, yeah.
He was so hard to get a job. Power Ranger on your resume, you got the job. He's like, dude, that doesn't work. And I was like, you know how many kids my age are owning their parents' business now? That would fly through the door. You don't need a doctorate degree. But I guess
come in uniform as well, like, full suit.
I told him to stand up and turn around to look at his butt, because I was like, that's all you saw in the old Power Ranger films was their butt. Like, that's it. But the one guest I have not been able to get for my show that I've tried, and he messaged me on Instagram too. It was a mime. I messaged him. I was like, bro, I'd love to on my podcast. Right? I'm like, yeah. He goes, we don't talk. I was like, yeah, but you're messaging right now, and that's a form of talking. And then he stopped, and I was like, I got you. You know, I got you. I was like, that's it though. I'm trying my best to, whatever my mind is interested in, I go and just look it up and see if that person does that career path. But like I said, I'll talk to anybody. Actually, I'll give you an example of how much of a child I am. So I did go to a fast food place not too long ago, but not for food. For this. This is a McDonald's toy. It is from the Lion King. Okay. And the reason why was my cousin wanted to get a coffee from McDonald's. So I said, all right, let's go. And I said, well, I'm going to get a toy. This dude opens up the door. He goes, here's your coffee, hands it to me. And then I hand it to my cousin. I look over, I'm like, can I get a toy? He just looks at me like, you're an adult, aren't you? I'm like, yeah, but I want a toy. And he's like, all right. And he hands me a toy. He goes, and then I saw that guy amidst the pandemic when everything started opening back up, working at a Food Lion. And I said, hey, remember me? He goes, man, that was a weird night, dude. Like, you were like 22. I was like, this guy want a toy? And I'm like, yeah, but you gave me one. He goes, yeah, it was really funny. It really cheered my night up. He also has a podcast. He told me about it. But that it was just that experience type thing where it's like, I love that with people. I love having this like I always tell people, you can never say I'm a good person or I'm a bad person. You just say I'm Robbie. You got to take me kind of how I go. Like I'll say some things where you'll be like, what? Like you're an idiot. Like you're special. You're my special guest. And then I'll say some things that'll make you, after a long day, just be driving home and be like, just start busting out laughs. And I think that's what more people should be like, because I'd rather have that than the awkward weather chats where it's like, how's the weather over there? It's like cold, man. It's just cold.
What's the long-term aspirations for the show? Do you see a path that do you just want to carry on until you get bored of it, or is it a kind of how do you see it going?
Honestly, I thought it was going to wrap up at 600. I've been thinking about it recently. I was like, maybe I don't know. I feel like the mindset I live by, people always wonder how to get a good show. Yeah, I can say a bunch of stuff that could be for comedic effect that could make the show amazing. I could say whatever, but if I'm bored in the podcast, then that's when I know my audience is bored, because it's just, I'm not interested. And I've had some that the minutes go by hours. And then I've had some where the minutes go by like a second, and you're like, whoa, like we've already been talking for an hour. I'm like, yeah, that's what happens when you're actually just having fun and talking. So, I've been thinking about it recently. I want to keep it going. I look at it like, yeah, the everyday thing is difficult, but I need people to understand, like some people don't even want to listen to the show before they go on. I'm like, you don't need to listen to the full thing. 1 minute. That's it. Just so you see, this isn't an interview. Station, that naturalness to it. If more people started doing that, and I know from guests that have been on, have started doing it into their own lives, reaching out and going out of their comfort zones after just having an amazing talk or something, that's when I'll stop, is when, like, if it gets boring to me, or if it just gets to a point where it's like, okay, people are talking again. There's that feeling. And it's not me trying to start a whole movement like, oh, I'm going to charge the air of conversation. No, but it's like, it's so simple, and it actually takes more time not to care. Like you automatically give them an autopilot answer, like, how's your day going, as you're still walking away. It's like, all right, you could just walk right by me. I won't be offended.
Maybe you should do seasons like we do, because we do seasons because we get to episode 10 and just think, right, we need a refresh, and just
I do seasons, but I don't break.
But well, no, I was going to say you should do seasons, but 600 episodes per season. Give yourself a week off. And then...
I'm on season 6, episode 96 right now, because each 100 episodes is a season.
Sure.
So all the way up to 100 was 1, all the way up to 200 was 2. Yeah. I used to do it on Spotify. It used to be like S2, E3, and I used to have that. But then I was like, let's just do a number, because I'm going to be like, it's going to say season 1000, episode 5, and people are like, I don't know what to do. This is too long.
Exactly. Well, Robbie, thanks for coming on to our show. We really appreciate you taking the time early over where you are, literally just finished work and then joined us to be on the show. So thank you very much. For our listeners, go and check out Robbie's show, because it is really good. Out of the Blank podcast. You'll find our episodes on there, which were really fun when we done them. But also, I've listened to loads of your shows now, and they're every single one of them is fascinating, really, because you're getting different people on there to talk about their stories and just shooting the breeze, really. So definitely go and check them out.
I was happy to be in Metropolis. I didn't get to meet Superman, but it If we can make
Well-
somebody go into a
Well,
telephone booth
that's
and
because you're in
explode
the
it.
Marvel universe. That's why.
Yeah. No, this is all new grounds.
Sorry,
It's
we
even
offended
worse when
like
your
that.
mom doesn't know. Like my mama, my buddy photoshopped. You know how they do the copies of the people's faces and put them on famous movie scenes? Took my face and put it on a and thing, and my buddy sent it to me, and he was like, "Look what I just did." And I was like, "Is this the new video game with Tom Holland where they changed the looks?" And he starts laughing, and I'm like, "What's so funny?" And he's like, "Look at the photo or look at the video." And I clicked on it, and it's Spider-Man pulling off his mask, and it was my face photoshopped on there. I was like, "Bro, I thought that was Tom Holland for real. Like that
Even
sucks."
you know. Even
Yeah.
you know.
And I sent it to my mom, and she was like, "I know my own kid." I was like, "That is me though, because we have one difference is in our nose. Our nose. I have one of my nostrils is a little bit slightly closed from I got into an accident when I was a kid." And I was like, "Look at the nose," and she goes, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And I was like, "You don't even know your own kid, yo. Like, how bad is that?"
Yeah, well, that brings us to the end. Thanks again, Robbie, for joining us. A pleasure as always. As before, thanks so much for the support that all of our listeners give us. It was great fun doing the prize draw in the past week, and thank you to all that participated in that. We'll definitely do some more. As always, you can listen to the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, and all other streaming platforms. And certainly YouTube, we will continue putting the videos up there. So do check it out and do let us know what you think.
Yeah.
But otherwise,
Next week is our final episode of season 4. So make sure you join us for that. But once again, thanks, Robbie. And we will speak to you all next week.
goodbye.